All right, this dude is he's called the civil rights lawyer, and he reviews cop body footage basically, and talks about the legality of it, and like sues police departments and stuff on behalf of people who had their rights taken away. This dude is called the Anabolic Cop. Apparently, he admitted to taking anabolic steroids in a Facebook post or something. Let's listen.
Enforcement officer can give you a lawful directive to exit the vehicle.
No, you don't.
Okay, well, I'm gonna drag you out then. Yep.
Go ahead, drag me out. Go ahead and drag me out.
Listen,
I'm calling my
car.
attorney. You can arrest. Hey,
Get out of the car.
no, you ain't about. Hey, now you're gonna mace me, really?
This just happened in West Virginia. An innocent couple was just trying to get to work. They were pulled over by a police officer for going allegedly left of center. The officer wrote a warning ticket and then demanded that they step out of the car after that traffic stop was over. When the passenger refused, he was maced and pulled out of the car.
Jesus Christ, dude. I had a little thing of mace. I didn't know what it was, and I hit a little button and it like sprayed just a little bit on the inside of a box, and that it didn't even touch my hands or anything. I was coughing and shit for like an hour and a half after that. Mace is serious. It's just the worst. To have it sprayed in your eyes, like, oh my God, dude, that would be nightmarish.
Police officers order you out of the car even after the ticket or warning has been written and delivered. I'll explain why this police officer does not understand Supreme Court case law as well as he thinks that he does. Also, I'll show you something really shocking that this officer posted to social media several days after this occurred. This is footage that was recently recorded out of Bellington, West Virginia, which is in Barber County, West Virginia.
I had to learn all the counties in West Virginia when I was little in school, 4th grade, I think. We had a whole song about it. Yeah, I guess the civil rights lawyer works in West Virginia. I think he was like a few hours away from me. He was on the other side of the state, but now then I moved to New York City after that. Lived there for 5 years.
Guy named Vince and his longtime significant other. So Vince was the passenger in a vehicle. His significant other was driving him to work. He works as a nurse, believe in a nursing home, and he really had to get there because the next shift was starting. They needed him. So it was a big hassle to get pulled over in this tiny town. On the way to work, he's going to be late. So the reason for the stop was left of center. The traffic stop went fine, really. They gave the information, and a warning was actually physically issued. So the stop was over. But then the officer says, now I want you both to get out of the vehicle.
Why would he say that?
Had to get to work. So he begins to then say, well, why do you need this to get out of the vehicle? And at that point, Vince picks up his phone. He starts filming. But I have the actual police report here. Let me read you what the officer says happened first, and then you can watch the video. So according to the officer, Deputy Christian Mayle with the Barber County, West Virginia Sheriff's Office, he says, on June 2nd, 2024 at 1912 hours, I observed a dark in color Volkswagen Jetta commit a left of center violation. I initiated a traffic stop on the described vehicle in front of Hometown Pizzeria. I made contact with the occupants, later identified as blah, blah, blah. While on the initial contact, I observed both occupants to be extremely nervous, the driver's hands to be shaking fast, and the driver's hands to be extremely swollen, which is consistent with the overuse of injecting controlled substances.
Wow, dude. He's straight up lying here. Hold on. So he claims that the driver's hands were shaking and extremely swollen, consistent with the use of injecting controlled substances. I mean, did you look for track marks? Did you look for literally anything at all? Of course he didn't, because it wasn't about that. It was about harassing them.
By the way, guys, check out my new shop, owenmorgan.com/shop. I have a bunch of really cool designs on there.
I inquired for the driver's documentation because she was the operator of the vehicle. She provided all documentation to this officer. I then verified the documents and returned them to her. I issued her a verbal warning for the traffic infraction and entered a secondary investigation. I inquired both subjects to exit the vehicle. Both subjects refused. Let's take a look at the footage.
He has no place to order the passenger out of the vehicle. He has no right to do that. As far as I understand it, you can only do that if you're detaining them. And if you're not detaining them, then they're free to go. They're free to move around and do whatever the fuck they want, not interact with you or whatever. They have no business telling you to do anything unless you're being detained in some way. The driver, the only reason, I mean, from my understanding, I don't understand the law super well, but, you know, my wife is a lawyer and I kind of followed a lot of the things that she was studying as she went through law school, so I understand a little bit, I suppose. And as far as I know, he had a right to ask for her license and registration since it was a traffic stop, presumably, but has no right to expect the passengers, like, identification information.
Sir,
So why do I need to step out of this vehicle?
because there's a Supreme Court case ruling called Pennsylvania v. Mims that a law
Okay.
enforcement officer can give you a lawful directive to exit the vehicle. And if you
Under what circumstances?
Pennsylvania v. Mims is commonly misused by cops. They just bust this out anytime they want something to be done. Like, it's not anything like what they ever represent it as, but I'm sure they'll talk about it in a second.
you do
For
not-
driving left of center?
if you do not comply,
No,
with that
you have no
directive-
probable cause for me to
If-
exit
if
this
you-
vehicle. You
if
have
you-
no probable cause
if
for me
you-
to exit this vehicle,
Yes-
Officer Mayle, and you
yes, I
know
do.
it.
Yes,
No,
I
you
do.
don't. No, you don't.
Okay, well, I'm gonna drag you out then.
Hey, so if you want.
Okay, before we go any further, let's address Pennsylvania versus Mims. This comes up a lot in police interaction videos because Pennsylvania Mims is a Supreme Court case from 1977, and it's often cited for the right of police officers, if there is such a thing, to order people out of the car during a traffic stop, even though it only really applied to the driver.
And cops don't have rights to do things. You have rights that prevent cops from doing things. That's kind of how it's really framed. Your constitutional right to not be dragged out of a car or identify yourself for no fucking reason.
77. I think this is overused in police training just to teach police officers that they can order anyone out of the car just for any reason. And that's not what Pennsylvania versus Mims held. And that's not how Pennsylvania versus Mims has been interpreted by the Fourth Circuit, which governs the federal case law here in West Virginia where this incident occurred. So let's
Honestly, like, the reason that warrants are required to, for example, go into somebody's house or to arrest somebody or whatever is because the system, the legal system, understands that cops are dumb as dog shit generally and don't know a fucking thing about the law. But but understanding the law is difficult and not something that, you know, society generally wants to expect cops to be able to do, to just understand basic fucking law. So you have to have somebody that does understand the law, a judge, to sign off on it and say, yeah, this is correct. We need to arrest this person, or we can search this person's house or whatever. When cops start taking things into their own hands, it inevitably ends badly because honestly, we're not hiring our best and brightest to be police officers. Truthfully.
make sure we're all on the same page about what Pennsylvania versus Mims is and what it does not do. So it all started with Terry versus Ohio, where a police officer then was able to basically stop and frisk somebody who's just walking down the sidewalk. The Supreme Court applied that same principle to a vehicle stop in Pennsylvania versus Mims in 1977.
Okay, hang on. One more time.
Frisk somebody who's just walking down the sidewalk.
Can you frisk somebody who's just walking down the sidewalk? The answer is no, constitutionally, but I don't know what this whole thing was decided as. That is unreasonable search and seizure against the Fourth Amendment. This came into focus a lot when Germany was, doing their thing, because they would ask for people's papers a lot. People shouldn't have to provide their papers. You should be able to just walk down the fucking street without worrying about what, the police are going to do to you or whatever. That's not necessarily, not that the Fourth Amendment was motivated by that. It wasn't, obviously. That was written long before Germany. But it definitely came into focus as an important right at the time.
And what it does not do. So it all started with Terry versus Ohio, where a police officer then was able to basically stop and frisk somebody who's just walking down the sidewalk. the Supreme Court applied that same principle to a vehicle stop in Pennsylvania versus Mims in 1977. The court adopted the standard that an officer can frisk a validly stopped person if the officer reasonably believes that the person is armed and dangerous. So the Supreme Court applied Terry to circumstances of a motor vehicle stop in Mims, where an officer in Mims, after making a routine traffic stop, noticed a large bulge under the defendant's jacket and therefore conducted a frisk.
I mean, not for nothing, but the Second Amendment is clear as day misinterpreted to be something that it's not. Couldn't possibly be clearer that the Second Amendment was not saying that, you know, we can have guns completely unregulated and there's no recourse to anything at all. Like, it should obviously be regulated at the very least. But the fact is, that's not how the Constitution is interpreted right now. As it stands, U.S. citizens have basically a right to own guns that is inviolable, that cops cannot overstep or alter or whatever. Just being aware of the fact that somebody has a gun on them is a clear violation of the Supreme Court ruling on the Second Amendment.
Mims Court explained that the bulge in the jacket permitted the officer to conclude that Mr. Mims was armed and thus posed a serious and present danger to the safety of the police officer.
Well, Bruce Lee could have posed a serious danger, gun or not. He wasn't threatening the cop. He wasn't making him feel uncomfortable. Wasn't giving him the idea he might pull the gun out. He didn't even have his hand on the gun. Okay, a gun, in my opinion, and I think in the legal opinion, is not just owning a gun, having one there with you is not reason enough to assume somebody is going to hurt you.
Adding that in these circumstances, any man of reasonable caution would likely have conducted the pat-down. The only evidence there of Mims's dangerousness was this bulge indicating that he may be armed.
Oh yeah, and he didn't even know he had a gun. He just saw a bulge. It could have been anything. Could have been a strap-on for all we fucking know.
Thus, Mim's status of being armed during this forced police encounter, i.e. traffic stop, that posed this danger that justified Mims being frisked. So in short, established Supreme Court law imposes two requirements for police officers to frisk somebody at a traffic stop. First, that the officer has conducted a lawful stop. That could be a Terry stop on the street, as well as a traffic stop. And secondly, that during the valid but forced encounter, that the officer must reasonably suspect that the person is armed and therefore dangerous. In both Terry and Mims, the Supreme Court deliberately linked armed and dangerous, recognizing that the frisks in those cases were lawful only because the stops were valid and the police officer reasonably believed that the person stopped was armed and thus dangerous. When Pennsylvania versus Mims is used as justification for bringing drivers out of a car, in order for that to be lawful, for that to be justified, those two elements must be met. One, it has to be a lawful stop. And secondly, there has to be some objectively reasonable information to the officer that the occupant may be armed and thus dangerous and needs to be frisked, patted down to see if he has weapons for officer safety. Now, I read you the report. Let's watch the rest of the footage and see if any of those elements are met here.
So he has to be armed and dangerous, and it's not something that you can just like do because you feel like it. You have to have a reason to think that the cop is going to, or that the person is going to hurt you, right? That's my liquor flask, officer. Calm down. Right, exactly. It could have been anything. It doesn't, like, this guy's whole catchphrase is, your rights don't stop, your fear doesn't overrule my rights, basically. I don't remember exactly what it is. I have rights, whether you're afraid of what I might do or not. Freedom is scary. Deal with it, is what he says.
Hey, so if you want to, hey, go ahead, drag me out. Go ahead and drag me out.
If he believed that he was genuinely in danger for his life because the guy might have had a gun, he would have treated it very differently. Instead of dragging him out of the car, he would have pulled a taser and tased him or something instead, right? He's giving the guy plenty of opportunity to pull that supposed gun out and do something about it. This is the clearest example of a constitutional violation that I've seen in a while. It's pretty bad.
Hey, no, officer, I'm telling you, you have no right to drag me out of this car. You cannot just do that. You cannot just do that.
Get out of the vehicle.
Did somebody say lawsuit?
Yes.
No, I'm not stepping out of the vehicle until you give me a reason.
Okay, bud.
You want to give me a reason, then I will. No.
Yeah, let him do it. Fuck it. In these types of situations, I have a problem with authority personally, in that, like, my dad, you know, he abused his authority terribly. And I lose my fucking shit on people when they abuse their authority, especially if it's like being abused against me. You know, I will burn everything to the fucking ground if somebody starts abusing their authority, certainly directed toward me. But in this type of situation, I think that I would just sit there and let whatever happens happen, because it's, you know, depending on what he does, I could get like hundreds of thousands of fucking dollars for this constitutional violation. Let him abuse his authority if that's what he wants to do. I am all in. Yes, please. I could use $100,000.
It's a bunch of shit, and you know it, Officer Mayle. I'm calling my attorney. You can arrest. Hey, no, you ain't about. Hey, now you're gonna mace me? Really? Really, guy? I'm not attacking you. I'm not doing anything to you, and you mace me?
Now get out of the car.
What'd you call me, a motherfucker? I'm not getting out of shit until he tells me why.
Hey, William told him, get out of the car.
No. Not until he tells me why I need to exit the vehicle.
Dude, the twig and berries on this guy to have been maced by this fucking cop and still refuse to get out. Like, oh my God. Does that apple bag drag on the ground when he walks?
Because that's the law. That's
No, it is not the law.
It's federal case law, Pennsylvania versus.
No, it is not.
He has no fucking clue what he's talking about. Or he does know what he's talking about, and he's intentionally setting out to violate the dude's rights anyway. What a colossal piece of shit, man. This is why we need to talk about this type of thing. We need to be aware of, like, our rights and what happens when a cop violates it. I lived in Milton, West Virginia for a while. It's a little town, 3,400 people or something like that. And every time I drove through town, every single time, they pull me over. They ask for my license, registration, proof of insurance, and all that other shit. Because they didn't fucking like me. One time they pulled me over, and basically, I don't even remember what it was. My insurance had run out. I don't know. It was a long time ago. And they told me that they had to tow the car. And I said, okay, well, let me just call somebody real fast. And I turn around, I make a phone call. And when I come back around the corner of the building, he's digging through my trunk. He had no fucking right to do that. I wasn't being detained. My car wasn't being towed or any of that shit. Someone was coming to pick it up. No, it must not have been the insurance then, because somebody picked the car up. I don't remember what it was that was going on. Anyway, I could have sued those people, those cops there, for everything that they were worth, but I didn't know that. It's valuable to know your rights so that you can keep these people in line, because here's a secret, an open secret, if you will. If cops, the more rights you allow the government to commandeer from you, the more rights you allow them to take, the more rights they're going to take. Right now, they're not allowed to pull you over for no reason or search your car without your permission. Right now. But they're doing it anyway. They don't give a fuck. What if they were allowed to do those things because nobody cared enough to challenge it? Then they would push it back even further, and it becomes, you know, something new. It would become a new right. That is generally what the force arm of the legal system in just about every government has always done. The representations of force always try to take. You cannot allow them to take.
It's federal. Shut up. Hey, don't tell her to shut up.
So there you have it. That's the end of the video. Violence was used. Physical force was used. Injuries were caused. Criminal charges were filed.
After the fucking traffic stop was over.
against both individuals. Those criminal charges are still pending. Turning back to the police report, it says this officer inquired both subjects to exit the vehicle. Both subjects refused. This officer advised the subjects of U.S. Supreme Court case law, Pennsylvania versus Mims, in order to better explain why this officer was requesting the occupants to exit the vehicle. Well, Pennsylvania versus Mims, as I explained, requires a lawful stop, number one. And secondly, it requires some objectively reasonable belief that the individual may be armed and therefore dangerous. So it's not just you can order somebody out of the car because they have to respect your authority and you're allowed to do that. It has to be based on a legitimate and objective concern for officer safety because, for instance, I observed a bulge. There were no facts alleged in the police report which brought forth any officer safety concern. The only facts that were alleged had to do with his drug investigation. So he says that both occupants appeared to be extremely nervous and that the driver's hands were shaking.
I didn't see that. But so what? Who gives a fuck? It's none of your fucking business if their hands are shaking. He can do whatever he wants. You didn't observe any, like, drug use or even any evidence of possible drug use. This cop was clear as day, just abusing his authority because he could.
And the driver's hands were extremely swollen, which he believed was consistent with the overuse of injecting controlled substances. So that's it. There are no allegations that there was officer safety concerns because the individual may be armed. And you can see from Googling this officer that he's one of these drug interdiction guys. He's got a canine, which he uses to sniff around vehicles. And it was later revealed during the arrest processing that he wanted them out of the vehicle because he was going to run his canine around the vehicle. So
which is illegal. You can't just do that shit. Unreasonable search and seizure. I think it depends on the jurisdiction if you can legally run the canine around the vehicle, but you certainly can't do it for no fucking reason. There has to be some reason for this shit.
Pennsylvania versus Mims does not do is allow a police officer, especially after the stop has already ended, to just order people out of their vehicle so he can run his canine around the vehicle and perform a drug investigation, especially where the original stop was for going left of center and that stop ended. Now let's look at that.
Yeah, I believe that it has to be like relevant to the stop. They can't just search you for drugs because they want to. There has to be some reason why. Like if they smell weed, then maybe. If they see like a needle in the back seat, maybe. If they pull you over because you were speeding, they cannot search you for drugs. There is no reason for that.
In Pennsylvania versus Mims, as the first requirement requires a lawful stop. The stop here was due to going left of center. Prior to even mentioning Pennsylvania versus Mims or ordering them out of the vehicle, that stop ended because he wrote a warning citation, he admits in the police report, and delivered it to the driver before he ever ordered them out of the vehicle. He wrote that he then entered a secondary investigation. Can he do that? Here we can look at the controlling Fourth Circuit case law, and there's a lot on this topic. If a traffic stop is extended in time beyond the period that the officers are completing the tasks related to the traffic infractions, i.e. left of center, the officers must either obtain consent from the individuals detained or identify reasonable suspicion of criminal activity to support the extension of the stop.
Like finding a hypodermic needle in the back seat, maybe. I mean, even then, there's a reasonable explanation for having that. Diabetes. I have needles lying all over my house because, well, not all over the place, but I have a lot of needles around the house because my cat has diabetes. A cop walking in and finding a bunch of needles in my house might raise suspicion for him, but all he'd have to do is ask why they're there and he'd find out, and that's the end of the story. It's not complicated. They're just trying to abuse their authority. That's it.
For the seizure ends when tasks tied to the traffic infraction are, or reasonably should have been, completed. The Supreme Court has said that extending a stop by even a de minimis, a very small amount, length of time violates the Fourth Amendment. That's the Rodriguez case. An officer may engage in certain safety measures during a traffic stop, but generally must focus his attention on the initial basis for the stop. An officer may engage in ordinary inquiries related to the traffic stop, such as inspecting a driver's identification, verifying the registration, verifying the insurance coverage, determining whether the driver is subject to any warrants. And while diligently pursuing the purpose of the traffic stop, officers also may engage in other investigative techniques unrelated to the underlying traffic infraction or the safety of the officers. But such unrelated activity is permitted under the Fourth Amendment only so long as that activity does not prolong the roadside detention for the traffic infraction.
So basically, if you pull somebody over for a traffic infraction and you don't see any evidence of drug, anything at all, you can't just search them, I think is the bottom line, right?
Fourth Circuit writes,
the use of smelling weed is no longer allowed in most states as a reason for search. Interesting. I wonder when that when that started to shift, because they used that as a basis for searches for like the longest time, like the fucking scumbags that they are.
Example, an officer may question the occupants of a car on unrelated topics without impermissibly expanding the scope of a traffic stop. An officer may also engage a canine unit to conduct a dog sniff around the vehicle during a lawful traffic stop in an attempt to identify possible narcotics. However, again, Fourth Circuit, controlling case law here, because such a sniff or investigative questioning is intended to detect ordinary criminal wrongdoing, these actions may not prolong the duration of the traffic stop, absent the consent of those detained or reasonable suspicion of criminal activity.
So they can't just pull you over and search everybody with the dog. They can't just like run the dog around every single car that they stop. That's not legal, is the point. They have to have a good reason.
Here,
or consent. Good reason or consent. In West Virginia, they do it anyway. They don't give a fuck about consent. They tell you to get out, and then they move the dog around it, whether you like it or not. And there are many cases where I've watched cops tap the door to get like the dog to give a something that looks like an alert. It's tantamount to planting evidence. And in fact, it should be considered the same as planting evidence for legal purposes, and they should be put in prison for shit like that.
Or reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. Here, the officer admits in his police report that the traffic stop related to going left of center was over. Therefore, he either needed the consent of the individuals, which clearly he did not have, as demonstrated by this video footage, or he needed independent, reasonable suspicion to detain these folks based on suspicion of criminal wrongdoing. Here,
whoa, hold on. Somebody just said Zach Wilde bought them a drink. He's playing in Pantera? I didn't know he was in Pantera now. Holy shit. Who's the singer? I don't think that they would. Well, I guess Vinny and Dimebag are dead now, right? So Phil, the rights kind of default to Phil, right? And the bassist Rex, probably. Vinny and Dimebag fucking hated Phil Anselmo, the singer of Pantera. And it's really, honestly, very sad. Like, I don't know that I can blame them for not liking him, but, Vinny blamed Phil for his brother's death because he was an addict, Phil was. And the band broke up because of his addiction. And, they wouldn't have been playing in a cheap dive bar if Phil had not broken up the band. Basically, that's the reason for blaming. I don't think that's fair. But anyway, that's pretty cool about Zach Wilde being in Pantera and buying you a drink. Damn.
He's suspecting a drug use. Perhaps if he had pulled his canine out and had the dog sniff the car during the ordinary procedures of the traffic stop he was engaged in, that combined with what he allegedly saw, perhaps could be enough to take it further in a drug investigation. But he chose to wait until after his initial traffic stop was over to then begin his drug investigation. The problem was the individuals were no longer legally detained pursuant to that traffic stop, and he didn't have enough reasonable suspicion or probable cause for any sort of drug investigation to then further detain them or detain them again.
So he's just like completely violating their rights, just completely ignoring it. He is putting them through a process that he has no legal right to put them through. This is the type of shit that police do. This is par for the course. This is why you gotta be aware of your rights and fight against shit like this at every turn, right here.
For a drug investigation, and they had no drugs. The only drugs that were found in the car were the lawfully prescribed prescription medications that this nurse was taking to work with him that he takes every day. Of course, he was still charged with that because they weren't in their original pill bottles, but they were in his pocket or something. I don't know. So these people were not free to leave.
Well, that's really concerning. Dude has a legal prescription to this medicine and he still got charged with a crime for not having them in their bottle. Yeah, that's the type of shit that Milton cops would do in West Virginia. 100%.
Out of their car. Pennsylvania versus Mims was used as justification to order them out of the car. However, there was no lawful stop and there was no indication that the individuals were armed and therefore dangerous. Therefore, it does not fall under Pennsylvania versus Mims anyways. And none of that justifies violence being used to pull these innocent citizens just trying to get to work out of their car, for which this officer bragged on Facebook in a post that I believe now has been taken down. This is what he said. Just several days afterwards, this was put up on Facebook, I believe is what prompted this. It put up on Facebook. It got like 40,000 views or something local.
God damn, dude. 40,000 fucking views.
And people were discussing it. And people were upset. Others were coming to the defense of the police officer saying, one should always comply when given instructions or orders by a police officer. So this officer, Christian Mayle, put a Facebook post up saying, forever striving to be the most protective, dangerous, and kind-hearted version of myself for my family.
What the fuck? That is like some bizarre alpha male shit.
Then that was later taken down, apparently. And looking at his publicly available Facebook stuff, I mean, I think we get an idea of why this really happened. You know, this is really a case of respect my authority, and it's sort of him losing his temper and going on a power trip here. A lot of police officers are into steroids. And I only say that in regards to this case because if you look at the last post on his Facebook page, it says, feeling anabolic this evening.
He said feeling anabolic this evening. Are you fucking serious right now?
Or GTFO. And then he's standing there with like his gym buddy in the gym and he's holding a gallon jug of water. Now, I've spent a lot of time in the gym. I was a college football player. I have been an amateur strongman competitor. I've spent much of my life in the gym. So that's him on June 7th of this year, just a few days ago. I mean, compare that to the picture of him with his dog in May of last year. He's gotten much bigger. He said he's feeling anabolic. Does that mean he's taking illegal steroids? I had to be tested in college football. Do we not test police officers? Has he been tested?
No, I don't think they do, actually. Not regularly, anyway. But aside from that, like, steroids are also illegal drugs, and this guy is being about as hypocritical as possible by trying to enforce drug laws while ignoring them selectively. I wonder if he arrested his anabolic steroids dealer. You think? Is it just people he doesn't fucking like that he arrests for drug use?
Should he be tested? After putting that up on Facebook. After all, he's interacting with the public. Look how he went 0 to 11 dealing with these just two innocent people trying to get to work in a nursing home. Why would it not be a good idea to have your police officers using steroids? Well, they might fly off the handle.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, this is what I forgot earlier. Steroids cause, like, violent outbursts. Steroids, you know, they change your emotions dramatically. A cop has no place taking steroids. You know, cops are the representation of force in society. And we need that. We need a representation of force in society. We do. But they should be beholden to rules and expectations far above and beyond what anybody else in society is beholden to, because they have such an important, sensitive role to play in society. They should not be allowed to just, waltz around exercising their authority anytime, any place that they want.
0 to 11 when interacting with the public.
No, you don't.
Okay, well, I'm gonna drag you out then.
Instead of just saying, well, here's why I would like you to step out of the car because I want to run my drug dog around your car. Do you have any drugs in the vehicle? Hell, he didn't even ask Vince for his ID. Just went 0 to 11.
Again, the traffic stop was over, so he had no rights to ask for his ID in the first place. But if he was a passenger, which it seems like he was, he certainly had no right to his ID, like in any way, shape, or form.
Amateur, a very, very roid ragey. I suspect that there are other incidents out there. If you have other incidents you're aware of, other video footage involving this officer or this department, please send them my way. I'll definitely be investigating further and do an update video when the body cam footage is released, because
I'm going to watch a little bit more just because there was an update to this. Here, this is an update to the Anabolic Cop.
Why do I need to step out of this vehicle?
Because there's a Supreme Court case ruling called Pennsylvania v. Mims that a law enforcement officer can give you a lawful directive to exit the vehicle.
do you remember this one, the Anabolic Cop, who pulled a passenger out of a car citing Pennsylvania versus Mims after this traffic stop was already over?
You have no probable cause for me to exit this vehicle, Officer Mayle, and you
Yes, I
know
do.
it.
Yes,
No,
I
you
do.
don't. No, you don't.
Okay, well,
The guy is correct. The Anabolic Cop, who claims to be feeling anabolic right now, quote unquote, on Facebook, has no right to pull this guy out of the car or anything like that. He's just being a scumbag and abusing his authority.
drag you out then.
Hey, so if you want to, if you, hey,
Drag you out. Yeah.
go ahead, drag me out.
I have a hell of an update for you. That criminal case is now over, and I was actually pretty shocked at the outcome. And yesterday I find out that that officer is no longer with that department. Did he resign? Was he fired? Did he just move? And now he's on leave from his new department. Why? Because he just got arrested. Don't believe me?
Holy shit, dude. The Anabolic Cop just got arrested.
Here's his mugshot.
If you guys think that I'm in the game of violating people's rights, you'd be wrong.
No, they were correct, actually.
Video that said otherwise.
So last night, I'm just relaxing at home, and I start getting all these messages, all these emails, and then I see on X that this West Virginia police officer has been arrested.
Belington police were called to a domestic incident on Center Avenue, and at the home, a female victim told officers that she'd gotten into an argument with 24-year-old Christian Mayle at a bar, and that he had driven her at a high-speed home, taking her phone away several times. Once home, the victim said she was on the phone with 911 when Mayle allegedly grabbed her by the throat and slammed her against a door and down onto a bed.
Holy shit, dude. This is what happens when you don't drug test your police officers for steroids. Seriously, what the f?
The officer says that he saw multiple injuries on the victim. Mayle, who is currently a probationary officer with the Elkins Police Department, is
A probationary officer. I know where Elkins is. I dated a chick from Elkins once. And his bond, he's out on bond, on $8,000 bond. Oh my God.
with domestic battery. According to the Elkins police chief, Mayle has been placed on administrative leave. He previously worked as a deputy with the Barber County Sheriff's Office and has been released on $8,000 bond.
And of course, immediately I recognized the guy because I did a video on him in June of last year. Deputy Christian Mayle with the Barber County, West Virginia Sheriff's Office. He says, on June 2nd, 2024 at 1912 hours, I observed a dark in color Volkswagen Jetta commit a left of center violation. I initiated a traffic stop on the described vehicle in front of Hometown Pizzeria. I went ahead and got a copy of the police report from his arrest for myself, and I'm going to show it to you. But before I do, this was the backstory of what happened before the camera turned on, straight to me from Vince, the guy who filmed it. So Vince was the passenger in a vehicle. His significant other was driving him to work. He works as a nurse, believe in a nursing home, and he really had.
So Vince had no obligation to interact with this cop at all. The woman, I guess, in the car had to interact with him to give him her information. But the cop had no right to ask for Vince's information, to my understanding.
There because the next shift was starting. They needed him. So it was a big hassle to get pulled over in this tiny town. on the way to work, he's going to be late. So the reason for the stop was left of center. The traffic stop went fine, really. They gave the information and a warning was actually physically issued. So the stop was over. But then the officer says, now I want you both to get out of the vehicle. And he had to get to work. So he begins to then say, well, why do you need this to get out of the vehicle?
I'm wondering why he chose to do it after the warning.
At that point, Vince picks up his phone. He starts filming. This is where the footage picks up. It's a common theme in many of my videos that cops like this escalate things very, very quickly, while many times there's not even any underlying criminal conduct.
Sir,
So why do I need to step out of this vehicle?
because there's a Supreme Court case ruling called Pennsylvania v. Mims that a law enforcement officer can give you a lawful directive to exit the vehicle. And if you
Under what circumstance?
That's incorrect. I mean, we talked about it in the previous part, but no, that's wrong. That's not what the Mims ruling said. It said that if there's good reason, then you can order them out, basically.
For driving left of center?
If you do not comply,
No,
with that
you have no
directive-
probable cause for me to exit this vehicle. You have no probable cause for me to exit this vehicle, Officer Mayle, and you
Yes, I
know
do.
it.
Yes,
No,
I
you
do.
don't. No, you don't.
Okay, well, I'm gonna drag you out then.
Hey, so if you want to, if you
This is the type of shit that happens when you're taking steroids and you're completely out of control. Seriously. You have no emotional regulation whatsoever. It's a pretty clear indication that something is going on. And you certainly should not be a cop if you have no emotional regulation like that.
hey,
I'm gonna drag you out. Yep.
go ahead, drag me out. Go ahead and drag me out.
Listen to
Hey.
Pennsylvania v. Mims.
Nope,
Get
nope.
out of the car.
Officer, I'm telling you, you have no right to drag me out of this car. You cannot just do that. You cannot just do that.
Get
You
out-
said
get
I'm
out of the
pulling you
vehicle.
over for left of
Yes,
center.
I-
No, I'm not stepping out of the vehicle until you give me a reason.
I don't think that he ended up getting out. I don't remember what happened.
Hey, bud.
You want to give me a reason, then I will. No, that's a bunch of shit, and you know
Get
it,
out of the
Officer
fucking
Mayle.
car.
I'm
Get out
calling
of
my
the car.
attorney. You can arrest. Hey,
Get out of the
no,
car.
you ain't about. Hey, now you're gonna mace me? Really, really, guy? I'm not attacking you. I'm not doing anything to you, and you mace me?
Now get out of the car.
What'd you call me, a motherfucker? I'm not getting out of shit until he tells me why.
Hey, William told him, get out of the car.
No, not until he tells me why I need to exit the vehicle.
Because that's the law. That's
No, it is not the law.
It's federal case law, Pennsylvania versus.
No, it is not.
It's federal.
Dude has no idea what he's talking about. The cop doesn't, obviously.
Hey, don't tell her to shut up.
What you can't really see is that Deputy Mayle then maced Vince, pulled him out, and arrested him, searched his car, found his prescribed medications, and ended up charging him with possessing illegal drugs, but they were actually his prescribed medications. But he also charged him with obstruction. Since I published that video, I just looked here today and got the final result of his criminal case. And it looks like Vince entered a plea agreement where the possession charge was dismissed and he pled guilty to the obstruction. But what obstruction did Vince commit? Now, I'm going to answer that question and explain whether or not he was allowed to order him out of the car. But for those of you who just want to know what's in the police report from this newest incident, I'll go over that first, then we'll get to the legal stuff. The criminal complaint charging now patrolman Mayle was written by a state trooper in Bellington, West Virginia. And he writes that at around 0200 hours on March 30th, he responded to a domestic violence call in Bellington, West Virginia. While en route, I was informed by dispatch they had lost contact with the caller, but they could hear the female screaming and crying. I arrived on scene at
Jesus, dude.
approximately 0 to 12 hours and located the victim at the front door of the residence. She stated that her fiancé, Christian Mayle, had fled the scene in his personal vehicle. While other officers searched for him, I obtained a statement and photographs. In her statement, she alleged that Christian began arguing at the bar after she requested to go home. While taking her home, she stated Christian operated his vehicle, quote, at like 104 miles per hour, and repeatedly swerved off the road and told her several times that, quote, he was going to kill her. When she attempted to get her phone out, she stated Christian immediately took it from her and threw it at her. She stated she recovered the phone, at which point he ripped the phone from her hands again and threw it into the windshield, causing a large crack in the windshield. Additionally, she stated Christian grabbed her by the back of the head and slammed her head into the windshield. She continued by stating once they were home, the argument progressed, at which point she retreated to the bedroom of the house and locked herself in there. She was actively on the phone with 911 at this time. She stated Christian then forced his way through the door, grabbed her by the throat, and slammed her up into the door. And then,
Jesus Christ, seriously, like, these people, it's like the people that have the most, like, authority in society are the people that should have it the least.
Onto the bed. After this, Christian allegedly loaded a handgun and then left the scene. In my investigation, I did observe and photograph multiple injuries, as well as many corroborating factors in the house and vehicle. Lastly, Christian and his vehicle were located approximately 1 mile from the scene, and the officers who found him recovered 2 loaded handguns in the vehicle. Based on the facts above, Christian Mayle was placed under arrest for the crime of domestic battery at approximately 0225 hours and transported directly to the jail for processing. End of report.
I'm surprised that they took the dude to jail in the first place. A cop? I mean, cops always stick up for their own. It's like a real problem at this point. Could it end up on a true crime show where Christian Mayle would be spending life in prison or on death row? Yeah, it very easily could have. Jesus, right? That's roid rage, 100%.
That's what's alleged to have happened, and it sounds like there's a ton of physical evidence that they collected to corroborate that. And her story is a story about this guy losing his temper. And isn't that what we observed in the video of him and Vince? Was he acting according to law based on reasonable suspicion that can be objectively articulated? Or was he just losing his temper? Was Vince required to get out of the car when he was ordered out of the car? Generally speaking, police officers can order you out of a car during a traffic stop. This is for officer safety reasons. However, this is often abused by police officers. They can't order you out of the car to frisk you or search you. They can't do it to extend the length or the scope of the stop. They can't do it to punish you or just to go on a fishing expedition because they have a hunch. Officer safety has to be the reason. They just have the ability to perform the traffic stop just as they would if you're sitting in the car, but instead you're just standing outside of the car. Here, Deputy Mayle had already completed the traffic stop. In fact, he admits that in his own police report. Then he went on his fishing expedition where he orders the people out of the vehicle. So Mayle could not use the initial traffic stop as justification to do what he's doing there to order them out of the vehicle. He has to have some other independent justification for this new detention that he's engaging in. He has to have a reasonable, articulable suspicion that criminal activity is afoot. The only reasonable suspicion that he articulated in his police report was an allegation that the driver and the passenger appeared to him to be extremely nervous. The only other thing he mentioned was that the driver's hands, this is not Vince, but the driver, they were allegedly swollen. And that's it. He didn't list anything else in his...
And he didn't point that out either, like, at the stop. I haven't seen anything that points that out.
Report, is that sufficient justification to then not just prolong the traffic stop, but to basically create another one and then order the occupants out of the car? West Virginia is in the Fourth Circuit, which controls the federal case law for that jurisdiction. U.S. versus Bowman, Fourth Circuit 2018, involved a traffic stop under similar circumstances. A routine traffic stop that was prolonged or lengthened into this drug investigation, and in that case, they did find drugs. They prosecuted the guy. In the end, everything...
It doesn't matter if they find drugs. It's completely irrelevant. You still can't have your rights taken. But they take them anyway. These types of people, they take them anyway. It's just disgusting.
Thrown out because the Fourth Circuit found that the Fourth Amendment was violated. Why? Because the suspicion just wasn't enough. In that case, the officer said that he observed nervousness. He observed items in the car, including a suitcase, loose clothes, and an energy drink, which in his mind indicated they were lying about the length of their trip. And also that the driver said he recently purchased a Lexus he was driving. And in the officer's opinion, that's something that drug dealers do, is they switch cars pretty often. Okay.
That is an absolutely wild, psychotic, ridiculous fucking reason to claim that somebody is on drugs. What a bizarre thing to say.
Court held that was not enough. And specifically on nervousness, the court said a driver's nervousness is not a particularly good indicator of criminal activity because most everyone is nervous when interacting with the police, so it's of limited value to the reasonable suspicion analyses. That does
Absolutely. Well said. Damn, I love that.
mean that nervousness is never relevant to reasonable suspicion, but nervousness alone is not enough. It has to be coupled with more. Totality of these circumstances. The only more given by Deputy Mayle was swollen hands. But I get swollen hands all the time because I have rheumatoid arthritis. That's one of the reasons why I have
Oh, damn, that sucks.
to wear a rubber wedding ring, because my hands get swollen at times depending on a number of things, including the temperature. I asked Grok, can swollen hands be indicative of criminal activity? And he said swollen hands alone are not a direct indicator of criminal activity. Medically, swollen hands can result from a variety of causes: poor circulation, injury, arthritis, allergic reactions, or even heart and kidney issues. There's no inherent link to crime in that. That said, context matters. If someone's hands are swollen from, say, a physical altercation like bruised knuckles after a fight, that could tie into criminal behavior depending on the situation. But the swelling itself, not a smoking gun. It's just a symptom, not a confession. Here, Mayle was saying that that is indicative of somebody injecting illegal drugs. That may be the case, but I've injected no illegal drugs and my hands are swollen all the time. So just like nervousness is something that a lot of innocent people will have at traffic stops, a lot of innocent people are going to have swollen hands. So that's just absurd. If we're looking at this objectively, he did not have valid, reasonable suspicion to restart another detention after he had already written the driver the citation. So how did Vince commit obstruction by not getting out of the car? In my opinion, he didn't, but I wasn't his lawyer in this case. And a lot of times for people, it's just easier, especially after months of fighting and having it hanging over your head, to just agree to some sort of plea deal where you don't have to pay anything else. You don't have to go to jail. You don't.
Totally. 100%. It, like, people just move on with their lives, which leads to cops getting away with taking your rights. And I 100% understand the need to just move on with your life, but you cannot let these people get away with it like that.
Any other punishment, you just sign a piece of paper and you're done. A lot of times people will agree to that rather than, fighting, having a trial, and then if you lose, having an appeal, etc., etc. Even after moving to his new department, it seems that now Patrolman Mayle at the Elkins Police Department, that's in Randolph
Wow, he got a demotion. Patrolman now. Interesting.
County, West Virginia, had been sort of doing the same thing. Here's some brand new footage that I received showing a traffic stop where Mayle is asking for consent to search this car. Traffic stop, minor traffic allegation. I believe it was loud exhaust.
Here's the documentation. So the traffic infractions, okay, verbal warning, all right, get the windshield fixed, and you can get the exhaust fixed, and you can. What happened?
So they're saying your exhaust is too loud, so he's giving them a citation for that? Okay.
A lady ran into me, an older lady. She couldn't see. I told her not to worry about it.
Yeah,
Maybe somebody will be nice to me whenever I'm old like that. I can't see.
I got you. Yeah, that's not bad. So, listen, where are you coming from? You're coming from welding school and
Mechanic.
Mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Alright. So, like I said, dispositions, verbal warning, okay? Secondary detention.
It's like really hard to understand. Like I said, dispositions, warning, secondary detention.
Like I said, dispositions, verbal warning, okay? Secondary
Doesn't warrant a detention?
detention. UAs are not free to leave this time. Is there anything inside the vehicle that I'm not aware of?
Is there anything inside the vehicle that I'm not aware of? So he's preparing to search their car with absolutely no reason behind it. Again, illegal. Cannot do that. He was fired, I think, and demoted to a patrolman, if my understanding is correct. And he's still abusing his authority. Of course.
What is it? What was the first part?
Is there anything inside the vehicle?
Before that.
Disposition verbal warning.
Oh, okay, thank you.
You've already got 6 points on your life.
Oh, I think he's saying I gave you a warning. Is there anything in here that I should know about? I gave you a warning. I'm wondering if he's doing that because giving them a warning makes them feel better about the interaction and more willing to let him search. Is that what it is?
Failure to identify.
Well, I really appreciate that.
For what?
You need to add to that, okay?
And no, you're good. You're good.
Okay, well, I'm going to have you do is shut the vehicle off and let you step out, okay?
Okay.
He's ordering the people out of the car and he's asking consent to search, but then he says, but I don't need your consent because I have a dog.
Why?
Jesus, dude, this is fucking... What a colossal piece of shit, honestly. Oh no, the app died. My game died. That's super sad.
Because I'm going to deploy my narcotic detection canine to conduct no fair sniff rounds.
Yeah, get out of the car because I'm going to run a dog around. So he literally learned nothing from being fired, is what I'm picking up.
Are we doing this?
Plus, you don't
There's a
have to.
warning.
You don't have to be okay with this, all right? So you can.
I was just curious.
So you can deny consent to search the vehicle, but where I have a
Won't that
dog,
just like
where
draw it out?
where I have a dog, I don't need your consent.
Yeah, he does need consent to do this shit, or he needs some reason to do it. He can't just do this. This is what I'm talking about, man. Got to push back against cops because they will take anything they can get.
So his dog is still in his police cruiser. The dog is not sniffing the car. He has no probable cause from a dog sniff. He's on his own fishing expedition without the dog.
Oh, okay, so I don't have to get out?
No, you have to get out
Oh, why do I have to get out?
because so I can run my
It's
dog
so
around
cold.
your son. And that's
He does not. They do not have to get out. Jesus Christ, man.
your lady's safety.
Okay. Yeah, you got your out?
If he was just a narcotic detection dog, you know, maybe, because then the only thing that I really worry about is officer safety. He is also a bite dog, so that's for your guys' safety. You guys step out.
Does having a dog allow the officer to search your vehicle
No.
without consent?
Yes, it does, miss. It's called a warrantless search. Okay.
No, the reason warrants exist is because cops are, generally speaking, dumb as dog shit. They're not lawyers and they are not qualified to make decisions about what the law says or whatever. So they have to get a lawyer, a judge, to sign off saying, okay, yep, this is the law and this guy has the right to do this. If we didn't have warrants signed off by the legal system, we would have dipshits all roided up just doing whatever the fuck they want because they feel like it. We should never, ever have warrantless searches. Although I do think that there are cases. I'm pretty sure that it's legal to do warrantless searches sometimes, depending on the situation. But still, we shouldn't. We're not hiring our best and brightest to be on the police force. Detective force, maybe. Legal force, like lawyers, yeah, sure. Best and brightest. Beat cops? No fucking way, dude.
It does not violate your Fourth Amendment.
No, it does not violate your Fourth Amendment.
Sorry,
you guys,
Yes, it does.
to let me out.
if you guys think that I'm in the game of violating people's rights, you'd be wrong.
Okay. Video that said otherwise.
Wait, I saw a video that said otherwise, she said. Nice.
Hey, guys.
I can get it. Yes.
Yes.
You gotta look down. Yeah, here, I'll get it. Can I get it? Can I get it?
You know, this type of shit happens all the time, and you can sue the shit out of these guys for this. And you should. You should not get away with this type of shit. Sue them into the ground for violating your rights like this, honestly.
Okay, okay.
She's gonna get you.
Yeah, I got you. There's a little button down in there you push down on.
Okay.
He's doing exactly what he was not supposed to do, which is to prolong the stop to fish for drugs. I mean, he's right there committing an illegal search. So why, you may ask, is he at this new department? Well, that involves yet another video. And that video, from my understanding, is the reason that he was basically forced to resign from the agency he was working at last and move to a new one. And I have that video, and that will come to you in an update because that one deserves a video of its own. So you're not going to want to miss the next video on this guy. Please subscribe both.
Fascinating, dude. Anyway, yeah, let me know what you think about it in the comments. I'm so interested by this subject, for real.